Hello, we want to welcome you to the first video in our series for implementing zones of regulation to support the social emotional learning of your students. We're going to start off first by taking just a few minutes for me to introduce myself, and I'll speak a little bit about my co-host, which will be sharing some time with you on part 2 videos. So my name is Tammy Williams, and I'm currently a professional learning coach with the West Kentucky Special Education Cooperative. A little bit about my background. I'm entering this year my 27th year working in the wonderful world of special education. Wouldn't have spent my years anywhere else. My background also includes 9 years of teaching special education, 13 years as a local director of special ed, and 4 years as a special ed consultant, or now we call ourselves professional learning coaches. My co-host for part 2 in our series is Kayla Jones, who is the newest member of our WKEC family. She has a background which includes the role of a special ed teacher, guidance counselor, and clinical therapist. I've been privileged to work with her while she was in the role of teacher and guidance counselor, and she has also been responsible for leading the implementation of the zones of regulation during her time as guidance counselor at Mayfield Elementary Schools. So our focus of part 1 in this series is to provide you an overview of social emotional learning as we build the necessary prerequisite foundations for implementing the zones of regulation curriculum framework. Before we proceed, I just want to remind you, if you have not yet taken the pre-test, we ask that you stop the video now and locate the link on your training guide. The pre-test is only to measure the effectiveness of our training, and it is not meant to be evaluative of you in any way. So let's take a look at the definition of social and emotional learning. SEL was defined by the Collaborative for Academic, Social and Emotional Learning more than 2 decades ago. CASEL is a trusted source for knowledge about high-quality, evidence-based social and emotional learning. It's a leader in research, guiding practices, informing policies, and convenes a network of experts, practitioners, and policymakers to accelerate and sustain SEL in communities nationwide. So we're going to be using a lot of their information since they are such a reputable organization. So you'll hear us refer to them as CASEL as we move throughout many of the slides. They defined social emotional learning, which was defined at least 2 decades ago, as the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, their ability to set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. We will be looking into each of these competencies or components as we move through each phase of this training. Social emotional learning is so important right now with everything that's going on in the world around us, with the pandemic and all the tragedies and issues that we're facing in our cultures and our society. And our students and even ourselves have been going through a lot of traumatic experiences. We've got families that have lost jobs. We've got individuals that are feeling very isolated, a lot of uncertainties as we've started the new school year. So SEL is the bridge to helping us gain that composure and that regulation, not only now in this time we're living at the moment, but throughout our life. So why do we need to spend time on social emotional learning with everything else that we have on our plates? Well, there are long and short-term benefits for our students. Everything you do in regards to social emotional learning is going to directly correlate to the success and the happiness as an adult. And of course, a lack of these skills is correlated with negative effects as well, such as an adult, unemployment, divorce, possible poor health, more likelihood of criminal behavior, and sadly, imprisonment. We're trying to create and enforce lifelong learners, not just to help them in the year or two that we have them in our classroom, but as an adult. And in regards to short-time effects, while they are in our classroom or school, SEL instruction can have an impact on better academic performance, improved attitudes and behaviors. Students will be more motivated, they'll be more committed to school, they'll be more willing to spend time on their work, and better behaviors in the classroom, which then would result in fewer negative behaviors. SEL has shown to decrease the disruptive, non-compliance, and aggressive behaviors, as well as delinquent acts and discipline referrals. And reducing emotional stress. Not only are outward behaviors improved, but SEL also improves those internalizing behaviors by helping with stress, anxiety, depression, and being socially withdrawn. Another important reason to spend time on social emotional learning is it supports the work and efforts of our trauma-informed care practices within our trauma-informed schools. If you've been through the trauma-informed care training with our consultants, Carla and David, then you'll see the importance of having a trauma-informed school. The ability to develop relationship skills is fundamental to SEL, and the research has proven many times how much those relationships have proven to be beneficial to children who have experienced trauma. We're going to touch on that a little bit later when we look at some of the considerations from the ACE study. But when you as a teacher incorporate this SEL, you are building the relationships and giving the students the skills they need to form and maintain those healthy relationships outside of school. As mentioned earlier, we would be referencing the CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. Here you have the 5 competencies that have been identified through their research that are necessary for strong social emotional learning. We have self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. And as you go outward within the visual, you'll see that SEL should be included not only in our classrooms through our curriculum and instruction, but they should be included in our schools as school-wide practices and policies, and in homes and communities where we have family and community partnerships. You can find a hyperlink within your training guide to the CASEL website. We're going to do a brief overview of each one of these competencies during this session. So self-awareness is the first competency we're going to cover, and according to CASEL, self-awareness is defined as the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions, thoughts, and values, and how they influence behavior, as well as the ability to accurately assess one's strengths and limitations with well-grounded sense of confidence, optimism, and a growth mindset. It's important to mention that a child may be strong in one area of self-awareness but weak in another. For example, a child may know exactly how they're feeling in the moment that they're feeling it, but not have an accurate perception of their strengths and weaknesses. Self-awareness includes the ability to identify our emotions. So students need to be able to put words to our emotions, accurate self-perception, so how we perceive ourselves, how someone is perceiving the responses that they're receiving from us, our ability to recognize strengths, self-confidence, and self-efficacy. The green boxes beside each one of those abilities represent something that is going to be covered within the zones of regulation. So as we get into that discussion more in depth later, we'll see the details of how each of those are covered. So let's watch a video that shows a good example of a strong self-awareness.
For children, learning is a social and interactive process that takes place with teachers, other students, and parents. Our emotions and relationships affect how and what we learn. Students are far better prepared to succeed in school and in life if they have learned social and emotional competencies in addition to academic skills.
We know that when kids have strong social and emotional learning skills, that they are better able to achieve academically, better able to work with others on a team, to collaborate, to manage conflict, to manage stress, to achieve goals. They have better life outcomes. So it's critically important that we take this seriously if we want to educate the whole child.
Social emotional learning is basically the focus on social emotional skills, how to interact with others, how to understand yourself, how to be able to behave in a way that you're supposed to in the right settings.
When we think about self-awareness, we're thinking about how do I know and understand myself, my emotions, my thoughts, my cultural identity. What are the ways in which I feel about a certain situation? Why might I feel that way? How do I understand myself and how I fit into my family and my community and the broader world? We want to give kids opportunities to really think about their own experiences, their own emotions, and how they are dealing with those things.
Self-awareness is really being in touch with oneself. I think as a parent, the best thing you can do is to be honest about how you're feeling, because kids look at us as we're invincible. You know, we're perfect, and we're not. And so I think having honest conversations about your struggles, whether it's at work or, you know, a goal that you're trying to achieve and the challenges that you're having in achieving those goals, kind of brings your situation down to their level so they know they're not alone and that it's normal to kind of feel these different things.
One of the things that we work on when we talk about self-awareness is helping students understand emotions. So teaching the vocabulary for emotions, teaching students to think about what different emotions feel like, and being able to name that for themselves is an important part.
As teachers and adults, we need to go to the next level. And that goes all the way to junior high and high school. There's things called emotion wheels, where you have all sorts of words that even as adults we can look at and say, oh yeah, that's a great word for that emotion. So really being able to help them identify their emotions is huge and give them vocabulary that's challenging them. Secondly, then, what do they do with those emotions? What gets you nervous? Or when do you feel stressed out? Or when do you feel angry? Well, I feel angry when Johnny takes my truck. What do you do about it then? But in high school, the same type of thing applies. If I see my friend Stephanie talking to Lisa or sitting with her at lunch, what do I feel? I feel jealous inside. And then asking myself, is that really a big problem? Is that a small problem? In a classroom, we can model that for kids. So as a teacher, I can say, I'm really feeling disappointed today, fill in the blank. And maybe I'll even take some deep breaths. Or gosh, everyone's really loud today. We couldn't go outside for recess. I'm feeling frustrated. Some deep breaths. So modeling that for kids is really important.
Also teaching kids this idea that through hard work that they're able to be more successful, teaching a growth mindset as opposed to focusing on you're smart, but rather focusing more on effort, helps kids to understand better who they are. Self-awareness is something that is constantly growing, and we want to be able to give kids tools and messaging around how to be thinking about their emotions and their understanding of who they are.
Righty. So the next the next competency we're going to take a look at is self-management. This is the ability to successfully regulate one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations. Effectively managing stress, controlling impulses, and motivating oneself. The ability to set and work towards personal and academic goals. And as you can see, impulse control, stress management, self-discipline, self-motivation, goal setting, and organizational skills are all covered within the zones of regulation. We're not going to watch this particular video for sake of time, but again, If you go to the link in your training guide for the CASEL website, all of these videos can be found there. I just want to draw your attention back to the list of the skills and abilities under self-management, and just take a moment to think about a specific student or students that you have, and how many of these bullets are things that these children struggle with. This idea of self-management is extremely important as we plan for supports and specially designed instruction and practices within our classrooms and our buildings to support these children. It seems like more and more of our kids are coming in with deficits in one or more of these areas. Social awareness is the third competency. It's our ability to take the perspective of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds and cultures. So we have to be aware of how different cultures, how different backgrounds create and shape our beliefs, our thoughts, and be able to take the perspective of those individuals and have empathy for those individuals and appreciate that diversity and show respect for them in lieu of the differences that may exist. And as you see on the screen, the perspective taking, the empathy, the appreciating the diversity and respect, all of those things are covered within the zones. So this video that is on this screen is great for making the connection to everything within the zone. So we're going to take some time to watch it to help us prepare for further discussion.
Students are better able to navigate the world if they can understand the perspectives of others. They will build better relationships at school, at home, and on their future jobs if they can empathize with others, including those from backgrounds and cultures that are different from their own.
When we talk about social awareness, we're talking about our ability to understand others and how they feel. So in social awareness, we're talking about the ability to take the perspective of others, to think through how other people might feel in a certain situation, to appreciate diversity, to recognize emotions, to read body language, really to understand how other people may fit into the bigger picture.
Social awareness is being empathetic towards someone else or the people around you.
When we think about empathy, we're really thinking about our ability to put ourselves in the shoes of another person and take their perspective. And it takes intentional work. We also know appreciating diversity and showing respect for others is a critical part of social awareness.
I think it's a good opportunity to have a conversation with your children, that there are people that are different from us, and that our response to them should be the same, because we are all humans, we all have differences, and it's important to embrace the differences that we all have. And I think modeling as a parent, opening a door for someone that may be disabled, or helping someone that's elderly with their bags and putting their bags into their trunk. Just different things that we as parents, we can model to children so that they feel comfortable knowing that it's okay to do.
How would I feel is an important lesson to be talking with our young people about all the time. And not just our young people, our older students and adults. We all need to be thinking about how might that feel if I were in that situation.
So if we're actually teaching that in school, what does that mean? You can start with your friend. What is Sarah thinking right now? You can do that in a myriad of ways. Teachers are so creative. We do it with books, with characters. Let's talk about this character. What is she feeling? What might she do? How would you feel in that situation? You can actually then have role plays as older kids, talk about something you went through, talk about how you were feeling. How do you think he was feeling? How do you think she was feeling? Have that be a continuous part of conversations. And this doesn't have to be a separate social emotional lesson. It can be history, English, even math, you name it. There's always a way to talk about how others are feeling and thinking and how you could work more together.
For young children, we would be very explicit about looking at facial expressions and trying to discern the difference between someone who's feeling sad and someone who's feeling angry. Because you can imagine if you're misinterpreting those signals that you may be interacting inappropriately, which can cause additional conflict where somebody may be sad and need a hug as opposed to someone who is angry and needs space. You want to be able to tell the difference between those, and really trying to understand, what if I were in that situation? When we think about people from different races, different cultures, we really have to not just think about my own feelings, but how might this feel given the differences that they have. It's all part of really trying to understand each other as humans. And you need only look at the news to see how difficult this can be and how important it is if we want to have a healthy, functioning society.
Next is relationship skills. Relationship skills within the SEL competencies is the ability to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships with diverse individuals and groups. The ability to communicate clearly, listen well, cooperate with others, resist inappropriate social pressure, negotiate conflict constructively, and seek and offer help when needed. As you notice with this competency as well as all the others, this isn't something that is unique to just small children. This is covered across all grade groups, age groups, even through adulthood. It just looks differently and should be taught differently based on who you are working with. So example, for younger students, SEL and relationship skill building will look like making and keeping friends. It may look like listening skills, how to ask for help. While working maybe with older students like middle school or high school, we may be looking at detailed conflict resolution skills, dealing with social pressure and boundaries. All of these, communication, social engagement, relationship building, and teamwork, are covered in the zones, and all can be tailored and adapted to fit the needs of the students that you're working with. So we're going to skip this video as well. Again, you can come back to it through your training guide. If for some reason you have difficulty accessing these videos once our training is over, just please reach out to Kayla or I. And the fifth and final competency is responsible decision making, which is the ability to make constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions based on ethical standards, safety concerns, and social norms. The realistic evaluation of consequences or various actions and consideration of the well-being of oneself and others. So when you break that down, it's identifying problems, analyzing situations, solving problems, evaluating, and being ethically responsible. All of these are covered within the zones, and all the thinking components, which changes mindset, which creates change in negative and fixed mindsets. This video connects to some different social thinking components and thinking strategies that we'll be taking or looking at later in some of the other videos. So we are going to take just a few minutes to check this one out as well.
Every child will face innumerable decisions throughout their lives. Will they make constructive choices that will help them build a successful life? That will depend on their ability to analyze situations, understand ethical implications, and evaluate consequences. Their decisions will affect their own well-being and that of others.
I think for responsible decision making, what we're really talking about here is teaching kids to think through all the parts of a problem and really understand it in a deeper way, so that they're not making impulsive decisions, that they're thinking about, if I make this decision, what are the consequences of that decision? So we're actually trying to think through a few steps ahead. How will other people react to my decision to do X? That's actually involving your social awareness and your relationship skills, as you're thinking through your responsible decision making?
When you're thinking about responsible decision making, we have to think too as adults, how much do we help kids make decisions? We have a lot of kids in college and young adults, anxiety and depression's through the roof, and I think there's a lot of kids that turn into adults that aren't sure how to make a decision on their own. So the idea as teachers and parents of supporting our kids in decision making and also letting them deal with natural consequences of their decisions when we know it's not going to hurt them, of course. And again, it's case by case and it depends on age, but it's really important to think about us as scaffolding them, but we want them to be able to eventually make independent decisions that hopefully are the right ones for them.
Having conversations after they make their choice, why did you choose that? What could you have done differently? Was that the best choice? And really allowing them to construct their understanding or verbalize the way that they made that selection. Sometimes it may be because it was enticing or because they thought it would be fun or they thought it would have a certain outcome. And that may really give us some insight on how do we present choices? What choices can we present that in the end really gives us what we're looking for? Because choice allows growth and opportunity.
As we think about discipline or consequences, really having our young people think through what happened, why did I do what I did, how did that make others feel, and then what's appropriate for me to do now, both in terms of having a consequence, but also to repair the damage. So if a young child is in trouble for being disruptive in the classroom, we could just give them a timeout, or we could actually help them understand, why is that actually a problem? What is the teacher's experience like when she's trying to teach a lesson and you keep on being disruptive? How would you feel if you were trying to communicate to a group of 25 kids, but one student kept doing that? And what can we do to let that teacher know that we understand how she must feel and that we're sorry about that? They're much more likely to really reflect on that and not do it again and to apologize appropriately than had they just been sent out or lost recess or just excluded from instruction as a timeout. So it's really important for discipline that we give kids opportunities to analyze the situation, to reflect on the different perspectives, and to repair that damage so that they're more likely to internalize the lessons that can be learned from these conflicts and not simply just repeat it again or just get angry.
So, prior to moving to the next video in the series, I want you to take a few moments to reflect on the 5 competencies of SEL. Do we have a clear understanding of where our students' strengths and weaknesses fall? Where our own strengths and weaknesses are in regards to the competencies? And as we make decisions within our classrooms, buildings, districts, on how best to support the SEL of our students, are we clear in understanding these competencies within our planning, the supports, the systems, the policies, procedures that we create in our school as in regard to our school climate and our culture that cultivates the skill development for each of these competencies? So please reflect on those questions. So this concludes the first video in regards to social emotional learning. The next video, we will be taking a look at self-regulation.